All right, folks, let's give a big hand to John Solomon.
Harold Leland is 66 years old. He gets up every morning and takes the bus ride to work. Harold works in retail. His days consist of hanging clothes, stacking boxes, and sorting through merchandise. Now, if Harold worked at a place like Target or even Walmart, his daily wage would be as low as $72. However, by the end of the day, Harold has only made the equivalent to about $24. Now, some of you may be thinking, here comes another speech about wage inequality in Southeast Asia. And while the issue is troubling, this miscarriage of fairness hits much closer to home. Harold lives right here in the United States, in Great Falls, Montana, and is legally blind. He works for Goodwill. Yes, that Goodwill. The one we all donate our worn-out swag t-shirts and YOLO hats to. Harold's wife, Sheila, who is also sight-impaired, recently quit from Goodwill for being paid as low as $2.75 an hour. So how are companies like Goodwill paying their disabled employees, like Harold and his wife, far below minimum wage when the rest of the country is making minimum wage or more? With something called the Special Minimum Wage Certificate, which according to an article by Forbes magazine on March 26, 2014, is completely legal and is the perfect loophole for companies like Goodwill to pay their disabled employees pennies on the dollar. So today, we will first look at what impacts the special minimum wage has on people. Next, we will examine how employers are exploiting loopholes in the special minimum wage laws. And finally, look towards what can be done to effectively end this practice of exploitation. So what exactly are the problems that the special minimum wage is causing? Unfortunately, the Lelands aren't the only people suffering from this form of exploitation, and some situations are even worse. According to the previously cited Forbes magazine article, some Goodwill employees in Pennsylvania are being paid as low as 22 cents an hour. Sheila Leland was quoted in this article as saying that this type of treatment made her feel like a second-class citizen and that her pay barely covered the cost it took to get to work every morning. Now, the biggest concern about this situation is that individuals with disabilities are already at a huge disadvantage when it comes to income. A report released by the American Psychological Association, last updated July 5, 2014, stated that individuals with disabilities are 3 times more likely to be in poverty. What's even more troubling is that the unemployment rate for people with disabilities is at 70% nationwide. However, as we examined earlier, even those individuals with jobs are still not being paid enough to escape poverty. On top of that, people with disabilities have a higher cost of living to begin with, and some are being forced to make cutbacks in order to survive. Research on medication adherence for disabled Medicare beneficiaries illustrates the effects of economic strain on the health of disabled persons. Of disabled beneficiaries, 29% skip medications, reduce the dosage, or fail to fill prescriptions because of the medication's cost. Now, the most troubling thing about this situation has been the response by companies like Goodwill. When President and CEO of Goodwill, Jim Gibbons, was asked about the Special Minimum Wage Certificate in response to an NBC News report on June 25, 2013, he was quoted as saying, "They're being paid what they are worth." Al Jazeera did a report on March 27, 2014, that stated that President and CEO of Goodwill, Jim Gibbons, makes approximately $800,000 a year. Now, this type of salary isn't anything new in corporate America, and actually seems rather low compared to larger-scale companies. However, according to a statement posted by the National Federation for the Blind on February 9, 2014, Goodwill exploits many of its employees, and this way is ironic, because its president and chief executive officer is blind. Jim Gibbons actually served as the president of the National Federation for the Blind. Goodwill cannot credibly argue that people with disabilities are incapable of doing productive work while paying its blind CEO over $500,000 a year. Although most of the focus has been on Goodwill, they aren't the only company doing this. Popular companies like Pizza Hut, Applebee's, and even Holiday Inn have all been granted special minimum wage certificates. So now that we've examined what impacts the special minimum wage has on people, let's now look at exactly what the special minimum wage certificate is and what loopholes employers are using to exploit these individuals. This certificate that employers can apply for under the Fair Standards Act, Section 14C, authorizes employers after receiving the certificate from the Wage and Hour Division to pay special minimum wages, which are wages far below the federal minimum wage, to disabled individuals for their work being performed. However, this certificate opens up an array of loopholes for employers to exploit their disabled employees. According to Section 14C, the employers aren't required to even consult their disabled employees about their pay at all, which means that the disabled individual effectively has no say in what they are to be paid. On top of that, the employers are the ones who get to determine exactly how much the pay rate is, and can change the pay rate whenever they want, as long as a test is administered to assess their abilities. But according to a Huffington Post article on November 5th, 2013, those tests are administered by the employers, who also get to determine whether the results are efficient or not, which usually result in two things: an unclear explanation and another pay cut. So now that we've examined exactly what impacts the special minimum wage has on people, and exactly what the special minimum wage certificate is, let's now look at what can be done to effectively end this practice of exploitation. First, let's think big picture. There's a bill on the table right now that will effectively end the special minimum wage certificate and repeal Section 14C. It will also require employers to pay at least federal minimum wage to disabled individuals. It's called the Fair Wages for Workers with Disabilities Act of 2013, and already has broad bipartisan support in Congress. It even accumulated over 500,000 signatures on a petition on change.org, last updated September 8th, 2014. In a USA Today article on February 14th, 2014, even President Obama expressed his desire to have Section 14C repealed. However, there's still more work needed in order for this bill to be able to pass. We should all contact our local congressional representative and express our desire for fair wages for everyone, especially workers with disabilities. With enough individuals contacting their representatives, we will ensure that either he or she votes in favor of passing the Fair Wages for Workers with Disability Act, which will permanently end the special minimum wage certificate and the specific practice of exploitation. However, we shouldn't stop there. Those businesses that have this form of certificate thrive off of our donations and our business. We should refuse to shop at these specific locations and choose appropriate alternatives like companies like Hope Chest that do not have this form of special minimum wage certificate. Now, of course, companies like Goodwill and Pizza Hut have all claimed that getting rid of the special minimum wage will effectively kill their business. However, in 1990, Salvation Army was following a similar situation. As reported by a New York Times article on April 4th, 2013, Salvation Army was being criticized for paying homeless individuals at least $3.80 an hour. They were forced to comply by the U.S. federal government, but they claimed they would go bankrupt within a year. However, the results were quite the opposite. According to a Forbes magazine article on July 5th, 2014, the Salvation Army now makes over $4 billion a year, which is almost a 50% increase from their income in 1990. Also, according to the Salvation website, last updated April 13th, 2014, they now offer full disability medical coverage for their employees. Today, we've looked at the special minimum wage certificate and how it hurts disabled individuals. We looked how in some situations people are being paid as low as 22 cents an hour, which is incredibly disturbing because they are 3 times more likely to be in poverty. We next looked at exactly what loopholes the special minimum wage certificate is causing, and finally, we looked at an effective solution to this problem by passing the Fair Wages for Workers with Disabilities Act of 2013 and by shopping at appropriate alternatives. Harold and Sheila Leland are simple people who want nothing more than to be treated like everyone else. They've been viewed their entire lives as different because of their disability and only want the specific form of equality. Now, of course, companies like Pizza Hut and Goodwill are all multi-billion-dollar industries, which will still make huge amounts of money, but they should have to pay these people an honest paycheck.